Okay, we're recording. So good evening, everybody, and thanks for joining us. Tonight's topic is called learning to regulating our emotions. It's a very, very risky shiur because it's a self-selective kind of a group, right? People that show up are curious about it because, well, they're human, they have emotions, they're actually honest. Really, everybody should be coming to this shiur. It shouldn't be self-selective. Everybody should be electing to come to tonight's shiur, if I may say so, okay? All right. So what are emotions? And by the way, for tonight, I'm very, very interested tonight in making this much more of a workshop. And by workshop, I mean interactive. And by interactive, I mean you participate. And by participate, I mean both publicly in terms of a chat, or you can chat privately with me as well. I think you have that choice. Additionally, to the public aspect or the chatting aspect of it, which might be the best way to go ahead and actually participate, there are some areas where I'm going to ask you to write pen and paper, or you're on a computer, you can use a Word document, whatever works for you, and you don't have to share. But it's actually an opportunity to put into practice what we're talking about. So instead of it being theoretical out there, something that's irrelevant or maybe relevant that I won't get around to, hope, Mir Hashem, we're going to give you a chance. I think this is probably just part one tonight. Probably we'll have a part two as well. But we'll have a chance to actually put some of these thoughts into action, and I think that's important. Okay, so that's just by way of introduction. And again, I want you to use the chat function when I ask you to use it. It should be at the bottom of your screen. And right now, I can't access it, I don't think, in the way that I'm set up right now because I'm splitting a screen, but everyone else could, okay? Remember, you can go ahead and type in that chat so it'll pop up on everybody. Make sure you chat to everybody and just say hello or something like that so they'll know where they can respond. You may have a choice to respond privately to me or you can respond publicly, okay? Okay, so regulating our emotions. Let's define our terms. Let's begin with defining our terms. What are emotions? What are emotions? Put it into the chat. Give me an answer here. What are emotions? Fair question, right? What are they exactly? Okay. Let's use the chat function here, please. Can anybody define emotions? Okay, reactions. Okay, Sharon, I'll call on you in a moment. Hopefully I can unmute you easily. Feelings. Sharon, sometimes it doesn't, your computer won't let me unmute you. Joy and happiness are examples, okay. Expressed feelings, okay. Anybody else? Anger. Raw responses, reflexive actions. Anger, interesting. Okay, let's see, what does my family say? What are emotions? Anybody want to say? Okay, no, they're very shy. Hey, nieces in Dallas, what do you say? Come on, send me a text here. What are emotions? Okay, my daughter says feelings. Expressed feelings, someone else says. Anger, okay, that's it. Emotions. I'm sure there's a good joke in here somewhere. But emotions are let's go with feelings. Okay, let's go with feelings. Some of you gave examples of feelings: happiness, joy, anger. Okay. Reactions, by that you might mean, or response to situation internally expressed. Yeah, sometimes. Let me ask you this simple question: are emotions of the heart or of the brain? Please use the chat. Are emotions of the heart or of the brain? Heart. Outgrowth of thoughts. Amygdala and heart. Heart originally, brain later. Okay. Myrna, can I call you out on this? I expect a more scientific an answer from you here. Heart. You know, in Tanakh, let me ask you this, okay? Those that are, some of you are a little bit more learned than others. In Tanakh, what does the word lev mean? Lev, lamed bet. Oh, Herb says brain. Everyone else says heart. Okay, I like everyone's participation. Technically, it's heart, but really, what does it mean? Let me ask you this, okay? The Torah says v'avarta It's Hashem Elokecha b'levavcha, I think. It says v'ahavta, but it also, the pasuk says to serve Hashem with love. And serve Hashem with your heart. And I don't know who Pixel 3a is, but I'm going to get there in a second, okay? To serve Hashem, yeah, I know it says to love Hashem with your heart, yeah, but it also says to serve Hashem with your heart. To serve Hashem with your heart. And the Gemara says, Ezahu avodah shebalev zui tefillah. What's the service of the heart? That's prayer. Okay, now when you daven, when you pray to Hashem, are you using your mind or using your heart? I want to tell you something shocking, okay? Most of the time, lev means mind. Emotions, I don't have the science here tonight with me, but some of you can look it up later, or all of you can look at it later. Emotions are not in your heart. Your heart is a muscle that pumps blood and oxygen around your body into your brain. That's what your heart does. Your heart doesn't have any feelings. As an icon, the heart is an emotion, okay? But emotions are actually in your brain. Now that's super helpful. It's super helpful. Why is that super helpful? Because if it's in your brain, you can work with them. If it's in your heart, well, then how are you going to work with it? It's just instinct. It's part of you're just natural. Does that make sense? If your emotions are in your brain, you can work with your emotions. I'm not discounting emotion. I'm not invalidating emotion. I'm just talking about potentially working with emotion. If it's in your brain, you can work with it. If it's in your heart, I mean, what's that medication people take for their heart? Beta blockers and I don't know, all kinds of stuff. Right. Okay. So again, just getting started over here. All right. What happened to my notes? Hold on here. No, lost my notes here. Here we go. Okay. So what are emotions? Can we control them? Can we control our emotions? So what do you guys think? Can you control your emotions? Everyone's going to say yes. Are we successful normally at controlling our emotions? Depends who, right? Some people are more successful than others. Somewhat, that's a good answer. Somewhat's a good answer. It means that sometimes, part of it, etc. Okay? Why is it important to control our emotions? Okay, so we're going to talk about anger in a little while. But why is it important we need to learn how. Yeah, that's my next question. But my question right now is, why is it important to control our anger? Anybody have a clear answer for me? You're welcome to type it. You can unmute yourself and tell me. Because it can bless and hurt, okay? Yes, they need to be integrated with rational thought and context. Okay, otherwise you'd be animals, meaning you don't want to be an animal, you want to be a person who's in control. Yeah, I get that totally. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Feeling influences our actions, okay? Our effects on others and serving Hashem properly, totally. Again, somebody keeps coming back to anger. We'll talk about anger in a little while, okay? We'll talk about anger in a little bit. Losing rational ability, totally. Okay. Feeling influences our actions, 100%. So how do we control them? How do we control our emotions? I actually have a better question than that. Is control the right word? Is control the right word? Maybe it is. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it isn't. It's just something that I've been thinking about. Is controlling our emotions the right thing? Redirect. Okay. Good. I love your participation. I love this. It's great. Okay. Learned emotions. Are they a learned behavior? Nature versus nurture. Okay. So you want to transcend the way you were brought up, or transcend your experiences in life and make the most of yourself. Sure. Okay. Good. Excellent. Okay. So.
But unmute me.
Okay, Sharon, you're now unmuted. Do you want to say something before I mute you again?
No, I just want to be able to know I could speak.
You could speak. Just wave your hand and get my attention. You can talk whenever you like, okay?
All right, thanks.
Sure. Okay. All right, so what does the Torah say? Okay, you're here you're still interacting with me, okay, via the chat. What does the Torah say? Does the Torah require us to feel certain feelings? Yes or no? Does the Torah require us to feel certain feelings? I'm getting a yes from my daughter. Okay, I'm getting a yes from everybody. Yeah, of course it does. What are some examples? Actually, Shava, it's not just sometimes for some of them. What are some examples, everybody? Go ahead, Bracha.
You can't be jealous.
Oh, Bracha says you're not allowed to be jealous. That's an excellent answer. Bracha is how old is she? 9? Yeah, my 9-year-old. Okay. And she says, yeah, you're not allowed to be jealous. Fear and love for Hashem. Love your fellow Jew. Compassion. Okay. All great answers. 100% the Torah requires us to feel certain feelings. Now, a teenager might ask something like, how can you tell me what to feel? Either I feel it or I don't feel it. And of course, that goes back to what we were talking about before, where we actually can redirect our feelings. But I'll tell you this, and this is a very important line. There's always a practice associated with the mitzvah. Do certain things, act in certain ways, so that you will feel love, awe, fear, lack of hatred. Does that make sense? There's always a practice associated with a feeling where Hashem says, I can't command you to feel, but I can command you to do the things and engage in those activities that will bring you to the emotions. So what do you see from here? I think what you see from here is that behavior leads to emotion. And that's certainly in sync with Torah values, isn't it? There's a school of thought called, or an ism, a philosophy called behaviorism. Behaviorism was a form of psychology that originated in the 19th century. And behavioral therapy is based on behaviorism. Okay, some names that you might be familiar with are B.F. Skinner, Pavlov, John Watson, William James, okay, famous psychologists from the early part of the 20th century, late 19th century. Okay, now that's in sync with the Torah, isn't it? Let me give you an example of that. I actually have a whole file on my computer called Adam Nifal Kifi Pulosav, that man goes after his actions. So here there's a Sefer HaChinuch. Sefer HaChinuch was a book written that's meant to describe to us the mitzvot and how they work and the purpose of them and how we can connect to them, the rationale, the reason for them. So there's a very interesting mitzvah found in Parshas Va'era or Bo, chapter 12 of Shemos, chapter 46. The Torah says, "Ve'etzem lo tishberu bo," that when it comes to the Korban Pesach was a special lamb, male lamb, that was brought on Erev Pesach as a sacrifice, and that was eaten by a group of people. And the people who were eating from it were not allowed to break a bone. Do you know how some people like to suck the marrow from the bone? I don't know if they do that just with chicken, but it tastes delicious and it's healthy. It's good for you, right? In small doses. So the Korban Pesach, that special Korban brought on Erev Pesach and eaten at the Seder, you're not allowed to actually break a bone. Now, why not? So the Sefer HaChinuch writes that Seder, at the Pesach Seder, we are celebrating the beginning of us as a nation, of being Mamlachas Kohanim and Am Kadosh, a nation of kings, of princes and princesses, a holy people. And every single year at this time, so it's appropriate for us to engage in activities and actions and behaviors that express how special we are. Do you know who breaks bones? Poor people. People who are destitute, that have to get the last little bit from every opportunity they have to take advantage of because they don't know where the next meal is going to come from. It says the Sefer HaChiduch, mitoch hamaisa, from our actions, v'hadimyon, in our imagination, she'anachnu osim, that we do, nikva b'nafshosenu hadavar le'olam. That's how we implant into our souls forever. Okay? So then he writes, a little bit of a long piece, I'm only going to get to the point that I'm trying to bring across. Then he says, Yodua hadavar, it's well known, shekol adam nifal kefi pu'ulosav, that a person is made up according to his actions. That means that our actions influence, our behaviors influence, and we will be who we are based on our behaviors. Does that make sense? He didn't make this up. The Sefer Ksav Kabbalah writes, same idea, and he says that since we are nifal kifi pu'ulosav, since we are made up by our actions, l'chein amar rabbeinu, therefore our rabbi said, God wanted to bring merit to the Jewish people, and therefore he gave them a lot of Torah, a lot of mitzvot. Why? In order to make sure that our minds are engaged all the time, that in everything that we do, we're engaged in good actions, and to be good people, and which will ultimately merit us olam haba. And therefore he says that's why, with the way that we dress, the way that we eat on Shabbat and on the holidays, everything that we do it brings out machshavos, taharos, believe, lihitar ulit labe, brings out holy and pure thoughts to make us holy and pure. That's what that Sefer Ksav Kabbalah says. There's a similar language that's brought also in the Sfarim, which I'll share with you as well. Not just Adam Nifal Kifi Pu'ulosav, that a man is made up according to his actions, but Achrei HaPu'ulos Nimshachim HaLevavos. That's after our actions that our hearts are drawn. So there are many, like I told you, I have a 12-page handout, not a handout, but just 12 pages of sources who speak about this phenomenon. Okay, and we'll leave it at that for tonight in terms of understanding that certainly the Torah, there's plenty of material in the Torah for the idea that our actions are going to impact who we are. Not just who we are, but even our emotions. I'd like to share a Gemara in Shabbos with you. I'll show you the Gemara. I'll share my screen here. If I can figure out how to go back to Zoom here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you and show you this Gemara here. Okay, here's the part that we're looking about. All right, how about the Talmud? What does the Gemara say about feelings? So this Gemara is found in Shabbat on page 105b. I just learned it recently. The Daf Yomi learned it about a week ago. The context is a little bit technical. So it has to do with doing something destructive. Technically speaking, if you are mekalkel, if you act in a destructive fashion on Shabbat, so you're not liable for violating Shabbat. Okay, it's called mekalkel. In other words, in order to violate Shabbat, it's got to be a constructive act. So if you do something that is actually a destructive act, you're not liable. Well, what happens if you tear a garment? Normally, tearing a garment is something which is destructive. Rabbi Avin said that if you were to rend your garment in anger, it's also constructive, because in doing so, he assuages his anger. Rending his garment calms him. Therefore, it can be said that he derives benefit from the act of rending, is consequently a constructive act. Okay, now this is arguable. Okay, I'll share the Rashi with you. Rashi writes, Nachas ruach liyato, shemishachech chamaso. Somehow or another, it helps him forget his anger. Now, I'll tell you the truth. From a modern psychological perspective, I don't know if this is ever correct. Because if you have children who are angry, and you read some advice somewhere online that says, "Oh, your angry child, you should have them punch a pillow." Most children get more angry from expressing their anger in that way, and there are much healthier ways of demonstrating calming down. Could be if you have a person who is, I don't know, God forbid, abusive or destructive, and you have him just tear a piece of cloth over and over again, that maybe that will calm him. Could be. Maybe that's what the Gemara is saying. Look at the Gemara here. The Gemara continues. Okay, and here's the point that I'm really trying to get to. The Gemara asks, is it at all permitted to tear in that manner? Wasn't it taught in a Braita that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says in the name of Chilfa bar Agra, who said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, one who rends his garments in his anger, or breaks his vessels in anger. Has anyone here ever thrown something out of anger? Don't answer the question. Or scatters his money in anger. Right? You see people just clear a shelf off, or clear a desk off, or clear a table off in anger. So it should be like an idol worshiper in your eyes. That is the craft of the evil inclination. That's the way the Yetzer Hara works. Today it tells him to do this, tomorrow it tells him to do that. Till eventually, when he no longer controls himself, it tells him to worship idols, and he goes and worships idols. Okay. So the Gemara basically says that anybody who acts out of anger like that, it's as if they're worshiping idols. Okay? The Rashi says, Alma lav mitakeinu. This is not something constructive. He's teaching his Yetzer Hara to be reactive. He's teaching himself to just give in. To just give in to the Yetzer Hara, and that, of course, is wrong and inappropriate, and not the way that it is supposed to be. Am I making sense? So certainly we have in the Talmud and in the Gemara and in the Jewish sources plenty that tells us, you know what? Emotions are something that we're supposed to control. We're not supposed to give in to them. We're not supposed to give in to them. And by controlling them, we can actually improve ourselves, and we control them. The Torah's approach is certainly behavioral. Okay, we're going to go with a cognitive approach for tonight, for the most part. Although there's going to be certain things he'll ask you to do, you can argue that's behavioral, right? It joins the two together, and we're gonna go with that approach tonight, and hopefully come up with some solutions to the challenge of learning to control, because that's really what our goal is tonight. Learning to regulate our emotion. By regulate, that means so it's in flux, so that we're in control and it's not controlling us. Does that make sense? If it makes sense, give me a nod. Okay, fantastic. What does the research say? The research says that the power of the clarity of knowing what you're feeling, of identifying your emotion, is extremely powerful. Labeling the emotion alone is enough to reduce anxiety levels. Okay? So, labeling the emotion, the way that we talk about that with kids is taming the monster. Taming the monster. The monster has a name. And if you can label the monster, you can deal with the monster. If you can label your emotion, you can start to deal with it already. So just putting a name to it is very, very, very powerful. Part of the challenge of putting a name to it is people lack self-awareness. They don't know what they're feeling. And worse than that, even, not worse, but even it's also, in addition to that, it's challenging is that a lot of people don't have an emotional vocabulary. Do you know what I mean by emotional vocabulary? I ask you this question, okay? How do you feel? Let's try this, okay? If you feel comfortable, answer publicly. But if not, you could answer privately. Okay. My daughter's laughing at me, getting distracted because I just opened the chat and I see that I missed some things. That's what I'm distracted by. Okay. My question is this. How do you feel right now? Okay. How do you feel right now? I meant to ask that publicly. Public question for you. I'm going to chat it. Here we go. What would your teenager or child answer if you asked them how they feel? What would they say? Stressed. That's fun. That's funny. Full from dinner. Bored. That's fine. Oh, finally, I got the right answer. Fine or good. Now, is fine an emotion? Is good an emotion? How many times have someone say, how you doing? Good. Now, the truth is, there used to be an obnoxious radio host where people always say, how you doing? And his answer was, do you care? And then he would hang up on you because nobody really cares how you're doing. I shouldn't say nobody. A lot of people don't really care how you're doing, and they ask you how you're doing because it's a way of opening a conversation, but they don't really mean to ask you how you're doing. And in fact, if you told them how you're doing, they probably wouldn't ask you again. Okay? So a lot of people will tell you, how you doing? Good. Or Baruch Hashem. What kind of answer is Baruch Hashem? Oh yeah, you're super religious. Okay, and how are you? Now that you've told me you're super religious, now tell me how you're actually feeling. Oh, thank God. Wow, okay, now you're grateful and religious. Yeah, but how are you doing? I care. Baruch Hashem, what? Okay. A lot of people lack an emotional vocabulary. Baruch Hashem, most of the people who are on tonight, all the people are on tonight, all the who answered have expressed stressed, calm, relaxed, and those are all wonderful. Those are all words. I shouldn't say they're all wonderful emotions, but they're all emotions. Okay, so Baruch Hashem. The research says that if you label an emotion, it will help reduce the anxiety levels. It will help reduce the intensity of those emotions. So just the power of the clarity of knowing what you're feeling is associated with managing your emotions. Additionally, to the extent that you can talk of your feelings out with someone that you're close to, or you can write them out, those are both good tools, is very important. You know, some people don't like to talk about their emotions to other people. Okay, but they're okay with journaling. They're okay with journaling. One of the most fun activities, and my daughter's sitting across from me, so is to read my children's journals, which I don't do because they don't let me. But if they were to let me, I mean, it's wonderful, you know? I was so mad today, and they're spelling it like hysterical, right? I'm working with a client right now. He said to me that he's going through a difficult period in his life, and so he made up a song about how stupid everything in his life is, okay? This is a little boy. Okay, and for him, it's kind of a dark sort of song, but because he's able to talk about it, even in a song on his own, it helps him. Somebody's asking, how can label an emotion reduce that emotion? Why does it work that way? I don't know, but that's what the research says. The research says if I can put a name to what I'm feeling, I mean, let's think about it out loud, okay? Or you can, maybe people want to answer. You're welcome to answer. If I know what I'm feeling, then I can begin to deal with it. If I don't know what I'm feeling, I can't deal with it. So having that self-awareness, I know by the way, hungry is not an emotion, right? That's a sensation. Or full is a sensation, not an emotion. So if I know what I'm feeling, oh, no problem, Elishama. Okay, of course. If I know what I'm feeling, so I can deal with it. But if I don't know what I'm feeling, then how do I deal with it? I'm stuck. And our goal here is to learn to deal with. And so it could be that's why. Yeah, maybe it helps. So someone is suggesting it turns a feeling into an intellectual exercise. So yeah, there's two parts of your brain. There's the emotional part of your brain, there's the intellectual part of your brain. Getting both parts of your brain engaged and crossing your corpus callosum and going back and forth across, it helps you process it and deal with it. So just even giving it a name by itself is certainly going to be of value. Okay, talking about it is certainly a very important aspect of it. Dr. Pelkowitz talks about how he was working with a colleague who was an expert working with trauma, and he showed him a functional MRI. And they had a patient who was stuck in a stairwell on 9/11 in the towers. Can you imagine? And he survived. He got out. And he survived and he got out. So he said that this is what his brain looks like. A functional MRI is where basically they have you awake in an MRI talking. And I guess they have a dye in there. And they're able to see which part of your brain lights up when you think about different things. So he said this is what his brain looks like as he relives the worst moment of his life. The part of the brain that lights up at that moment is Broca's area. Broca's area is the language center of the brain. And initially when he started talking about it, Broca's area was totally shut down. He was frozen. He was not able to speak about it. But the more he was able to talk, the more he was able to name the monster and come to terms and integrate his feelings, to digest his feelings, and to be able to share his feelings over time. Eventually, Broca's area was lit up again, and he was healed over time, just by being able to talk about it and being able to name it. Daphne is asking an interesting question, and then we're going to get to some practical examples. So if you want to use pen and paper, please make sure you have pen and paper while I deal with this question. Or you want to use your computer, open up a Word document or something like that, okay? So Daphne writes that I think if I'm angry and I describe it, it may reduce it. But if I love something, I don't think it reduces my love emotion. That's an interesting question. I haven't thought about that. Could it be that the principle that we're talking about is true for negative emotions only? Could it be? Can we argue that the principle that we're speaking about is true for negative emotions, but for positive emotions, it could actually even intensify the feeling? What do I mean by intensify the feeling? Talking about how much love I feel for a person can help me integrate the love, make it more intense. Talking about how calm I am can help me integrate those feelings of calm and make me feel even more calm. Interesting question. Let me think about it some more. Fair question, interesting question. Okay. All right. So let's talk about a feeling very, very common nowadays, which is the feeling of being overwhelmed. Now, I want to share something with you that I think is very powerful. Okay, if you don't remember anything else from tonight, I want you to listen to this idea. My wife and I have this concept where we talk about not being overwhelmed or feeling overwhelmed, but rather feeling whelmed. Okay? Who knows what I'm talking about? Not to feel overwhelmed, but rather to feel whelmed. You see, feeling overwhelmed is not a good feeling. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. I don't know what to do with myself when I'm feeling overwhelmed. I don't know where to start when I'm feeling overwhelmed. My mind floods with various hormones that stop me from working and make me more susceptible, and my emotional bandwidth, and by that it means my capacity for tolerating various triggers, it gets lower and lower. Nobody likes to feel overwhelmed. Being overwhelmed is not good. Okay? But feeling whelmed, though, is human. I have a lot going on, but I'm able to manage and function and deal with one thing at a time. So let's talk about the feeling of being overwhelmed. Okay, so what I want you to do right now is I want you to write down all the things going on in your life. I want you to write down all the things going on in your life right now. Write down everything going on in your life for yourself. You don't have to share this with me. You don't have to share this publicly. I'm going to go ahead and just type myself a list as well. I'm going to make a list for myself as well. Okay, this is an exercise that I came up for a young man who is feeling very overwhelmed. Okay? So take a couple moments and make a list for yourself of everything going on in your life. Everything going on in your life, okay? This is where the workshop part comes in. 2, No. I very easily wrote down 10 things, no problem. I'll share with you. I'm very happy to share with you. Okay? In 3 minutes, I was able to write down 10 things. Notice that I'm very, very specific. Look at my list, please, if you want to. Notice how specific I am. Monday night class prep, Tuesday night class prep, Wednesday night class prep. I don't just write class prep because that's not specific enough. Working out. Yeah, I love to work out. Therapy clients. I have, Baruch Hashem, it's slow, but it's starting to pick up a little bit. Okay? Raising money for the shul banquet. That's a huge one on my head. I have a huge, huge responsibility to raise money for the shul banquet. Number 7, Tehillah. I have a daughter with special needs, and she's particularly challenging these days. Number 8, the family. You notice how I put Tehillah and the family in 2 separate areas. Kind of feels like that sometimes. Number 9, my sister-in-law's wedding in Toronto. If we go, we have to quarantine for 14 days. Do we really want to do that with Tehillah? There's a certain amount of stress going on with that, okay? 10, my chavrusas, my learning. I've got 1,000 other things. I just wrote 10 quickly, okay? If we're married with children, grandchildren, whatever, it can get pretty complex, okay? Maybe health, etc. Okay. For me, writing down all these things, writing down everything going on in my life, helps me feel a little bit less overwhelmed, even though it's a long list. Why? Because I can begin to deal with each one. Okay? Let's take this a step deeper. Okay? Let's take this a step deeper. Is there an emotion? Yeah, someone is saying it's like a to-do list. In a sense, right? That's what I asked you to do. Write down everything that you have to do. But now I'm going to ask you to do something a little bit more than that. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. I want you to write down an emotion that's associated with each one. I want you to write down an emotion that's associated with each one of these things that you have on your to-do list. Okay? This happens to be in a basic emotion circle that I found somewhere that you're welcome to use. But imagine let's take one of the more difficult or challenging things that I have. Let's say it's raising money for the banquet. So which one of these would apply for it, if any of them? Optimism, aggressiveness, acceptance. There's a number of emotions here. And now obviously you can go beyond this list, okay? You certainly can go beyond this list. If you can take a few of the things that you wrote down and talk about which emotion is associated with them. If I had to write about Tehillah, I might write something like, maybe there's a little bit of sadness there. There's certainly a stress, which does not appear on this list over here. Okay? Yeah, there's love as well. Okay? And by the way, you can surprise yourself by saying, oh, you know what? I do associate love. It's not just, there are not only the negative emotions or the quote unquote bad emotions associated with that item on my list. I also have some positive emotions associated with that item on my list. Okay? Certainly there can easily be positive emotions associated with them as well. And by the way, you don't have to have negative emotions for everything. God willing, you have a lot to do and you have very positive feelings about those things. That can give you a lot of emotional power that you need to deal with some of the more difficult things as well. Which is also fascinating. Okay? When you're ready to move on, I'm actually going to stop sharing just so I can see you better. If anybody wants a list of emotions, you can just Google list of emotions, okay? But that's your challenge here, okay? The challenge here is to take one of the things on your to-do list, or multiple, and write the associated emotion. What feeling comes to mind when you think about needing to do blank? Should be items, not times. I'm the world's worst typist and speller. Okay, so that's the next step. Here are some typical of the 12 basic emotions, if that helps you as well. Okay, so now you should have a piece of paper in front of you, and on that piece of paper you should have your items, and you should have the associated emotion with them. Now, if you numbered them already, you can cross out your numbers. I want you to do is put them in the order. Okay, I'm going to give you a few things to do with them. You can do them now, or you could do them later. Okay, first thing I want you to do is put it in the order of which ones you think about with the most intensity. Okay, and maybe if you have a color highlighter or something like that, you can highlight, I don't know, you can just highlight the 3 that you think about with the most intensity. Choose a color. Okay? The next thing I want you to do, I'm going too fast over here, you can let me know. Okay, it's hard for me on Zoom to tell how, if you're really doing it or not. Okay? Next thing I want you to do is put them in the order in which you think about them with the most frequency. Okay? So in theory, you can write this list multiple times. You know what? Somebody wrote to me, I'm not linear with this stuff, only when I calendar it. No. The point of this exercise is to make it linear. And the reason to make it linear is so you can handle it. In other words, calendaring it gives you the opportunity. If it's just a to-do list and you put it in your calendar, so then yeah, that helps you be organized about it, correct. But sometimes the things on your to-do list are not just things to do, they're actually just ongoing challenges that you have. Like I can't calendar Tehillah. I can't. So that's why I think I told you, write down 10 things that are going on in your life as opposed to 10 things to do. Even though your husband said it's like a to-do list. It's kind of like a to-do list, but it's not strictly a to-do list. 10 things going on in your life, okay? Some of the things you can do something about, and that makes you, that way you're not as overwhelmed, maybe you're still whelmed, but that's certainly a tool that you're gonna use to deal with some of the things that's going on in your life. Other things though, not necessarily, okay? So the idea of making this linear is to help you cross over from feeling overwhelmed to be able to deal with it. And I'm expanding on the exercise by asking you to think about, now I know this is a challenge. It may not be the language you speak, but I wonder if it maybe helps. If it helps, then it's worthwhile. So I asked you to reorder them. And I'll do this with clients, by the way, okay? And they'll have a list in front of them, and they'll have a second list in front of them, and a third list in front of them, and that's what the purpose of this workshop, of really what I want you to do at home. And again, the amount of energy you put into it now is what you'll get out of it. So you're gonna put them in the order, so there's FID, right? FID, frequency, intensity, duration. And so finally, put them in the order of which ones you think about with the most duration, that you just can't let go of, okay? Again, if you can associate a feeling with each one, that's already being able to let go of it a little bit because you're starting to name it to tame it. You're starting to label the emotion. And by the way, this is also a great exercise for self-awareness because you don't know how you feel about something, but you can ask yourself how you feel about something. And that's where you put the feeling there. Okay, so this is a small exercise that takes probably 15, 20 minutes if you do it properly. And anybody that wants it, like as a worksheet, I'm happy to send it to you afterwards. To me, it's a very worthwhile exercise because right now, especially during COVID, people are feeling overwhelmed and there's a lot to do and whatever, right? You saw my list of 10 things I was able to come up with in like 3 seconds. And Baruch Hashem, I don't feel overwhelmed by it. I'm Baruch Hashem organized for the most part, and I feel good about all these things. That doesn't mean that I don't have feelings associated with them. I do. Certainly the ones that I can't just calendar, right? So being able to work and live with those feelings can be challenging. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. I want to talk about one more topic, which also can be super, super helpful. And I'm going to put that into the chat here, which is differentiating between primary and secondary emotions. Now, Daphne, I'm not sure, are you still on? Let's see. I see you here. Yeah, Daphne, you're still on. So this goes back to a little bit what you were writing about before, even though you told me that there was a difference between the French and the English, or but this differentiating between primary and secondary emotions. We have primary emotions and we have secondary emotions. The secondary emotion is the emotion that follows the first emotion or the primary emotion. For example, feeling shame because you got angry. In that case, anger is the primary emotion. Shame is the secondary emotion. A person can get angry for being angry, or depressed for being depressed, or angry for feeling fear. In these 3 cases, anger, depression, and anger are the secondary emotions. But it's critical to differentiate between the primary emotion and secondary emotion, to be able to tell what's what. Why? Because we're not going to judge and say one is good or one is bad. But in order to deal with something, you have to get back to the original problem. And if you're only dealing with a secondary emotion, then you're not. For example, a close relative dies and you feel grief. But then maybe you feel ashamed because you feel so sad. It's hard to understand why someone would feel that, but that's the example I found. Shame is a secondary emotion. If you're working on the shame, you're not going to get anywhere. Okay? It's hard, though, to identify and distinguish between the two. And the reason it's hard to identify and distinguish between the two is because the switch happens super fast. So it is hard. I want to talk about anger for a moment. And I want to show you an anger wheel. I'll share my screen with you. This is a great graphic that I found. Okay, take a look, check this out. Behind this, anger might be, and take a look at this list here. Ask yourself the last time you got angry. And by anger, by the way, we could have an anger thermometer. It could be irritated, annoyed, frustrated, rage, mad, upset, right? There's all kinds of different synonyms. Usually it's just with different levels of intensity of anger. But very often, anger is not about anger. Anger is about, you felt embarrassed, but then you got angry. You felt anxious, you got angry. You felt some frustration, which is the inability to change your situation, and then you got angry. You got confused, confusion, and it expresses itself as anger. Hurt or guilt can express themselves as anger. So when someone comes to me and says, I get angry all the time, I do work on my anger management. So what I really want to know is, what are they really feeling? And most people don't have a self-awareness to identify it. Most people don't have a clue what they're feeling. But when you start to give them the language, you show them one of these graphics, it can help a lot. Because if you can start to identify what's really going on, and by the way, for your spouses, for your children, for your parents, for whomever in your life, your friend who's angry, very likely they're not angry. Yeah, you see the anger, it's expressed as anger. And maybe they're even yelling, but what's really going on is they're feeling hurt. That makes it so much easier to deal with it for yourself and realize, you know what, they're not really angry at me. There's really something else going on over here. There's really overwhelming stress going on over here. There's really humiliation, whatever it might be. Okay? That's one example. I've got another great example. I must be insulting a lot of people. I'm losing people right, left, and center over here tonight. Okay, take a look at this graphic here. I like this graphic in a way even more than the first one. Okay, I see some of you nodding. Good. The idea is simple. What you see, again, is the tip of the iceberg. It's just the expression. But what's really going on is something underneath the surface. So for ourselves, in being able to distinguish and differentiate between primary emotion and secondary emotion, like what is it that we're really feeling? Being able to name it on that level. So that's also a very useful technique for learning to regulate our emotions. So earlier in the chat, there was one person who consistently came back to, anger. But what I think is that now we understand anger a little bit differently. I'm not saying anger is not necessarily, it can't be a primary emotion, it can be. Very often, though, it's secondary. Are we culturally taught, can you go to Tila, please? Someone wants to know, are we culturally taught to default to anger versus expressing the other core emotions? I don't know about culturally. Nature, nurture, and part of that, might be watching television or whatever it might be. Rage Against the Machine. There's a band called Rage Against the Machine. Is that what the band is called? What a stupid name. Forgive me for using the word stupid. Rage Against the Machine. Why would anybody choose to listen to music like that? Okay, there's all types. It takes all types to make a world, right? Did I just insult half of you? I'm going to lose more people now. Okay. So I don't know if we're culturally taught to default to anger. I just think that most people, for whatever reason, we can speculate. Why is it that people don't have a rich emotional vocabulary? I'm not sure. I don't know. It is what it is. So, but as adults, we want to learn to respond, not to react. We want to learn to be the best we can be. And I think a lot of that is, learning to express ourselves properly. If I tell my child I'm angry with you, what message is the child going to hear? Or what will my child feel? Probably fear, right? Fear might be what they feel. Tell me what you think. Rejection, yeah. What if I said I'm disappointed? Some mechanchim say the worst thing you can tell your kid is I'm disappointed in you. Because then the child might feel hopeless. You don't want your child to feel that. A lot of people are guilty. Rifty, did I ever tell you I'm disappointed in you? No, I never told you that. Thank God. Okay? What if I said something like, I'm feeling frustrated because I try to teach you how to do this and it's not helping. Then what? How would you feel? Maybe disappointed yourself. Or maybe you'll feel like you're gonna want to work harder at it. I don't know, whatever, right? I'm just giving an example. It's not the best example. But we want to use terminology that's going to empower people to change. Okay? Michal, I'm not sure I used the best example. But we want to use terminology. I never get upset with my kids. Baruch Hashem. But we want to use terminology that's going to empower our children for change and growth and not hurt them and make them feel indifferent, inept, bored, rejected. Right? Doesn't that make sense? What about for our spouses? Same thing. Oh. What about for ourselves? The same thing. Oh, I'm disappointed in myself. Really? That's the key to your self-esteem. Be disappointed in yourself. Give me a break. Obviously, it's not going to help you grow. So use words of empowerment for growth and for change. I think those are the keys for growth and change. And hopefully I've given you a sense on why regulating emotion is critical. And it's not just that the Torah tells us to act in certain ways, but really to think in certain ways to enable us to learn that our emotions are in our brain. They're not in our heart. They're in our brain. We can't control them. If we process them, if we integrate them, if we move them from one side of the brain to the other. Okay? If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. I love, Daphne, your question earlier about the positive emotions. I liked my answer, but it was a great question. Okay? I'll go ahead and unmute anybody that wants to be unmuted. You can always mute yourself. And if you have any questions, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, I'm happy to call it a night. I think we did justice.
Awesome.
Thank
It
you.
was so good. It was really good. I'm sorry your mom didn't hear this.
Tell her she's got to watch the recording.
You know
Thank
what? After we ended Suri's shir, Nini was speaking for Tehillim tonight, and I got another call,
Oh, wow.
so I couldn't stay on. So
Okay.
the Stewart family tonight times 3.
All right. I didn't know that.
All good. All good.
All right.
Take care.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for
you.
coming on.
Thank you,
Good
Rabbi.
night.
My pleasure.